All right, it is 6:30. I'm going to start the meeting with a very holiday happy gavel. We will start with a roll call. We have Brian Murphy, Chris Buckley, Bill Bolton, myself, Rebecca Hansen. Welcome to new member Bonnie Sears. We have Jack Scarborough and Steve Whitman. We will start off with a review of the minutes from our last meeting on November 16th. Any comments, corrections, or funny things to point out in the minutes from last meeting?
I think we need to put the rest of Jack's name in there under call to order. Unless.
Oh.
Jack Ska.
All right. All right.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Been called worse.
Any other corrections or comments?
That's the only thing I saw.
Would anyone like to make a motion to approve these minutes with the one correction?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Next up, any public comments unrelated to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to the next item, a non-binding conceptual presentation by Walk to Campus concerning a multi-unit housing development at the top of Toby Road. We have somebody who is representing this project.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is this best? I can sit here or stand up here?
Which works best for getting the minutes? Is it in front of the mic or?
He has a microphone.
Oh, there is a microphone. Yes. Yeah, if you may join us at the table if that works for you.
So, thank you all for allowing us to speak tonight. My name is Ro Elam, and I own Campus Properties. I want to introduce Will Davis. He's part of the project team. He's a civil engineer with Horizons Engineering. They have 2 offices in New Hampshire and New London and Littleton. He's in the New London office. Our architect is stuck in traffic. He'll be here shortly. But I wanted to let these guys speak here in a little bit and talk more specifically about the project. I wanted to give a little bit of background about our company and kind of just a general overview of what we have in mind. So our company, Walk to Campus Properties, we've been around for about 13 years. We're in 8 college markets. We're an off-campus student housing provider. We have property here in Plymouth. Our company was founded on the premise of trying to provide safe, well-maintained rental property in college towns that is extremely well located, so that it's really proximate to campus, with the notion being that our students would be close to class, close to athletic facilities, restaurants, bars, coffee shops. So even though they're choosing to live off campus, they're still really part of campus and the fabric of the university community. And that's important to us. We own all sorts of different types of property. We have a lot of houses like we have here in Plymouth. We have apartment buildings, we have duplexes, and anything sort of in between. We've done a lot of renovation, we've done ground up development. Everything that we've invested in or renovated or built is done with a long-term mindset. We've never sold any property. We are long-term holders of real estate, and so that investment is made as if we're going to own it forever. And that's sort of been our mindset since the beginning. We have, as we consider, 4 customers. The students are obviously our customers. We want to provide a nice place for them to live. Their parents are our customers. In many cases, they are dropping their child off to live independently for the first time, and there needs to be some ownership in that so that they feel good about who they're turning their children over to. The university is also our customer. The success of the university obviously benefits us tremendously, but we also feel like that if we do our job, we reflect well on the university. And then finally, the town we consider our customer. That we are providing tax revenue through income tax or property taxes, that we are reflecting well on the university town, and that we're good neighbors. So in 2015, we bought a portfolio here in Plymouth from a guy named Don Stope, who some of you all may know. He had acquired properties around the university for almost 35 years. And since we bought those properties, we have tried to maintain them and maybe even improve upon the work that he had done over his tenure. And we have a local staff. We actually inherited staff from Don, folks who had elected to stay on, and we're glad they're part of our Walk to Campus team. So that's generally just sort of about Walk to Campus. So why are we here? We bought in 2016 a property on Toby Road, which is sort of on the north end of campus. And we bought it with not a real clear decision or idea what we were going to do with it. It was so well located. It really fit our brand to be close to campus. Since then, we've been kicking around what to do, and that's kind of why we're here tonight. We have a team who's helped us to try to understand what's possible, the challenges of the site, the opportunities, et cetera. We've been proceeding with sort of an understanding that there is an issue in town, in that there is grave concern about the migration of students further and further into the residential neighborhood. And that you have absentee landlords who maybe are not as mindful of what's going on in the properties they own. So when we bought the property, we saw that as an opportunity maybe to provide a place for students to live that's really buffered from the residential area, and we thought that was important. So diving into this handout I gave you, the site, as I mentioned, is on Toby Road. It's just under 3.5 acres. Current zoning is civic institutional. What we are proposing is fairly dense, and it's a 5-story apartment building that consists of 68 units, a total of 120 bedrooms, and a combination of studio, 1, 2, and 3 bedroom apartment units. As you can see on the second page, the property is fairly well surrounded by trees. Bailey Avenue is really the closest residential street to the site, and there's some really tall trees between us and them. On the third page, you can see that the sort of northeast of this site is Langdon Woods Dorm. Southeast is the White Mountain apartment complex, and then what's not on there is the new Merrill Place dorm, which is just south of our site. On the third page, you can see in pink is the Plymouth State Land Holdings, and then our site, as you can tell, is completely surrounded by the university. So really, it's almost part of the university in many respects. So that's sort of the general premise. And when I first brought this project to Brian, really over a year ago, he said, I kind of had some general ideas, and he said, you need to bring me something. We've got to react to something. So this is the something. And we tried to come sort of with some general ideas, but we really want to hear from the town. And this is really the avenue to get some feedback and hear from what you all or thinking. We would need to get a variance on density and potentially that height. I need to understand a little bit better if this would need a height variance as well. But so that's kind of it. If there's sort of general questions, fire away. If not, I was going to let Will speak to the site plan that is the last page in your little handout.
I have a question.
Sure.
In the summer, when school's not in session, would this still be, would people still live here, or is it? It would be an opportunity to, most students bail out of here.
Mm-hmm. And with our existing housing, I would say probably 10 to 20% of the bedrooms are full. We would love for there to be more summer housing. I think that part of the reason Merrill Place was built was to provide some opportunities for housing in the summer with air conditioning and et cetera. And we would need to understand better what that opportunity is, but potentially yes. And we'd even consider putting in air conditioning so that people would have a place to live if they wanted to in the summer.
How many acres do you own right here?
3.4.
Okay.
There used to be a little sort of clapboard white house there that was in disrepair.
Jimmy Smith's old house.
It was, yeah. He was not who we bought it from, but
no,
maybe way back. But anyway,
that was
it's gone
time,
now.
yeah.
It's been torn down.
My question is sort of involving university. It seems like they're trying to pull more students back on campus. Obviously, there's limitation in the amount of housing, but how are you working with the university as far as their long range planning for their own institution, residential stuff, and also long-term enrollment as we see the population in New Hampshire aging and less students? So
Both good questions. So we've met with the university several times. I've met with the president last week. I think that their plans for upperclassmen aren't going to change much. They've got a dorm, I think it's Smith dorm, that they're considering making some improvements for upperclassmen, but I don't know what that would be a small percentage of the total number of off-campus students that they would provide housing for. So they're really, from what I've been told, there's not a change or plan change to bring more upperclassmen on campus.
There was another dormitory that was targeted to be built as well. I don't know if that's still in the hopper. Or?
He has suggested that the Merrill Place is the last new build they're going to do for a while.
Right.
So.
what do you guys do anything as far as patrolling on, I wouldn't say weekend nights, but weekends start, a little earlier around here. So do you guys have a patrol to keep an eye on things getting out of hand?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, we do.
Obviously, this would require an on-site manager and a team of its own, probably. I mean, just stationed at that property.
Right.
Since it's so big and.
Yeah, we've not gotten too far into that detail, but what we typically have in other markets is we'll have either on-site management or what we call our market assistants, who are students who work for us or employed by us. So it may be some combination of that. We haven't gotten that far.
I'd like to hear about the site plan, because it seems to be a site that's a combination of both steep and wet. So it'd be great to hear.
Sure. My name is Will Davis. I'm with Horizons Engineering. And as Ro pointed out, we kind of view this as the starting point. We're going to take feedback from the board, and we can progress this. But it is a fairly steep site. It has you can kind of see the topography here. It's high up in here and then kind of slopes down to wetlands at the toe of slope on all sides. And the site plan assumes we would come in about where the existing driveway comes in now for the house that used to be there. And then we'd have some ADA parking and sort of a flatter parking area at the front entry. And then we'd come down a little ways to a sloping parking lot that would allow us to have entry at the lower end for garage parking under the building. So this is all kind of sloping down this way. And we would end up with quite a few walls out here. It's a very, I would say it's a challenging site, you know, and that's part of what we're working on, but it will involve some blasting and, you know, removing of ledge and kind of flattening out an area up here. We're proposing, we would envision walls down here and a wall up here. So this would be higher, and this wall would allow us to have a lower parking area in here. This wall would be, we'd be high up here, and then this would be, you know, low, matching existing grades down below. Let's see, what else can I... It's kind of the quick, brief overview. Did you have any specific questions or have any thoughts on what we're showing now? I mean, I guess the circulation, you know, you could come in and obviously circulate around. You can go into the garage, come back out, the same entrance. There's an entry here at the midpoint, which I'm sure Adam can show you more about the building itself, but the current concept is looking to have an entry here and an entry in the front here, as well as I believe we may be envisioning another entry along the back here. And then there's another one down at the lower end by the garage entrance to exit the garage at the garage level.
I had a question regarding your plans for mitigation of runoff from the parking area.
Yeah, I think what we would, at this point, you know, we haven't really dived into a lot of the detailed design, obviously, or any of it. But the current vision for us would be to provide some detention up here under the parking lot. Because of the ledge on site and the slopes, you know, infiltration would be a challenge, but I think we can do a good job of detaining and providing extended detention under the parking lot.
Are you, you're a private company, correct? You're not part of the college?
No, I'm a consulting civil engineer that I'm working with.
So when these are built, they're built by, and you rent them out? Okay, so it's nothing to do with the college?
Nothing at all.
So in other words, we would at least get some tax dollars from this building, correct? You're not nonprofit or anything else, right? Thank you.
Yeah, I think, like Jack, I don't have an issue with the use. Like, the use seems like a good spot for the type of use that you're talking about. But I'm a little concerned with the level of imperviousness that 3.4 acres becomes. And just knowing some of the issues that have happened related to some of the big development on the campus side, contributing to issues in that watershed and down to the Baker River. I don't want to make sure we make it any worse than it's already become over time.
Not to mention the flood issue.
Right. Right, because that's a lot of water headed down to contribute. Right.
Right. Well, I mean, the basis of our design would be trying to knock down peak runoff, you know, to basically be right back at pre-development rates. And I think your regulations require us to do that. So that's what that would be our aim. And we do have, you know, a reasonable receiving waters here.
I'm just going to echo that concern too with the steep slopes surrounding the development with the wetlands and then the Baker River right there. Just I would encourage you guys to use as innovative stormwater management as possible on this project. So.
Well, I mean, that's kind of the overview on the site. I don't know if Adam, you want to show them a little bit about the building.
Good evening. My name is Adam Wagner. I'm one of the owners of Market Square Architects in Portsmouth. I want to start out with a caveat on this. I always get concerned the first time we're presenting drawings because of the technology we use today. They always look like they're far more advanced than they are in terms of the process, than the old hand sketching. So I'm sure Ro introduced this as saying, we're here tonight to introduce this project to you, but let you know very much it's a work in progress. So please don't take the hardline CAD drawings as an indicator that we're further along than we actually are. And we're looking forward to your feedback here tonight. So I want to start here. This is the lower level of the building. And as Will mentioned, it's built into the hillside. So we've got a full parking level at the lower end here, entry into here. As you can see, we've got a central core lobby here. We've got a couple of additional vertical stair elements on the ends. This end of the building effectively daylights down the hill. So we have an amenity space proposed there, whether that's a fitness center. And we also have allocated a good chunk of space for bicycle storage, because that's always an issue with student housing. So that's the gist of the lower level. Once we go upstairs a level, we have laid this out for the 120 beds that are being proposed. It's a combination of studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and even 3-bedroom units. One thing I always like to share when I'm working in a community that we're introducing student housing is that the units being proposed here are the same size units that you would do for any other market rate apartment units. There are some student housing projects that they'll go in and they'll build 5- and 6-bedroom units, which have one sole purpose for the end of time, and that's student housing, because you're not going to be able to rent a 5- or 6-bedroom apartment unit. All of these apartments have that diversity that, should things change in the future, they have other uses just because of simply because of their size as studios, 1s, 2s, and 3s. So just from a coloring standpoint, we have slightly different colored blocks here showing you how the units are broken up in the space. Just take a typical 1-bedroom here, entry into a small kitchen area, living area, bathroom and bedroom. They're very straightforward. And then we have taken that and started developing early concepts on the elevations. And so first pass here, again, looking at trying to get larger windows in the living room spaces, smaller windows in where the bedroom spaces are. And we're really just getting into the beginning of how we break up the facade so that we can break down the scale of this thing. Obviously, as a 4-story building, it is a sizable building, and how we treat those exterior materials is going to be a big indicator of how we can break down the size and scale. And then on the back here, these colors are a little off, but again, we've started developing this into the computer a little bit more. So this would be that end elevation as you drive into the site. This is that larger elevation as you go down the site. You can see the grade dropping off, entry into the garage here. And again, just really starting to work on breaking up the massing in the best way we can. Thoughts, questions? I take criticism very well. It's okay.
So what's the overall height of the building then?
I actually don't have that on this plan yet. So typical wood frame construction, floor to floor, we're talking 11 feet, floor to floor. So that would give you 44 feet here. And we're still working out some details on how we would treat the roof in terms of the slope portion, the flat portion. It really ties into what kind of mechanical system we do. If we need to locate condenser units, the best place to put them is on a flat area of the roof. If we don't need condenser units, then we can just do a full gabled roof, and it would get a little bit taller, but it's a little bit more of a traditional form. So we're still trying to figure that out.
So our zoning ordinance is what, 30?
35.
35, and that's more for life services, right?
That's, pardon me, it's on average height above grade. So
Okay.
you take the highest and the lowest and split them. And yeah, basically that came out of life safety.
The length of the ladder.
But yeah, and that, it was also written before the war. So, I mean, the zoning was adopted in the 60s in Plymouth. I don't know when that particular chapter came in, but it's old. And there have been a number of fairly recent builds that are higher than that. They do have to go through the zoning board process and are weighed in on by the various services.
It would also be anticipated this would be a fully sprinklered building. I've done a lot of student housing around the country, and that's always a question that we get. And a lot of times we'll do the concealed heads. They can't hang things off of them and do things that college kids do.
It was also mention of having to go to the ZBA because of density. How far away from the regs is this proposal? Because this seems like a lot of units.
Yeah.
I think that the acreage would allow 16 units.
16.
Which are based on standalone, you know. I mean, we looked at this with Harbor Homes.
Right.
And that was even over the numbers there. It's kind of based on location, based on the availability of services. This particular one will go right to Plymouth Village Water and Sewer, so we don't have to worry about the septic space that we need for like a single-family home or a traditional two-family home. But again, the metrics were developed around the village. And even though this is located in town, it's not specifically in the village, if you know what I mean. That's the block between Highland and Texas Hill and Broadway all the way down to Main Street. So, you know, that's basically what we're talking about there, plus, you know, the other neighborhoods around.
I guess my reason for asking was for one, to be clear, like what the difference was. I appreciate the fact that you guys are coming in early. Like, I think it's great that we have a chance to see and hear and give feedback, and then you can decide if you still want to bring it forward. But if the student housing market did fall out and this was families, or if the initial proposal was families, I think we'd have a lot more people here giving their feedback. And so I just want to make sure that we're treating all the applicants the same. We're going through the same process of fairness and thinking about
What do you mean you-
multi-unit, 120 bedroom apartment building. We haven't seen one like that in Plymouth in a long time.
Oh, so you think there'd be a lot more concern or interest from people in
if the
town?
density that would be approvable is 16 units, and we're talking 120.
Yeah.
That's a significant increase.
120 beds, because the
Right.
density was 16 units. So
Okay.
I think we're
68 units is what we're talking about here,
So,
68. That's correct.
which is still high.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
You know, unless the university goes out of business, there would be no need to convert. But this is convertible, as was made, you know, that's always been the question about allowing the higher density, even in smaller scale. You know, what's going to happen to these buildings if something happens, you know, that alters the business model? You know, I think the worst case scenario would be high vacancy rate, as far as we know. Or, you know, taken the other way, it would be fully occupied with, you know, families, which would place a burden on the schools and everything else. But, you know, it's one of those things where you got them all here or you got them scattered around. They're going to have the impact isn't on the land where they're building. The impact is, you know, down on Old Ward Bridge Road, and that's going to happen just from regular development anyway, or we hope. So, no, I know what you're saying, that it is huge.
And that was just part of my comment. I think my other kind of general comment was on a 3.5 acre site with such development constraints to then also be looking to get such density. like if it was an applicant anywhere else in town, I mean, this proposal really makes sense to me. I just don't want to be blinded by the fact that it seems to make sense. You know, because I think if it was, if we were saying in any other part of town that someone wanted to do this and there were butters and there were other issues,
Yes.
which they don't really seem to have, I think it'd be hard, right? So that was my 2 cents.
Again, considering where it is, and I mean, this speaks volumes, I think,
Yeah.
that it's either going to be a single use, it's always going to be associated with this pink property, unless the pink property is no longer a pink property, in which case we got much bigger problems than that.
Sure.
You know, but so yeah, you know, in one way, no, it would never be approved somewhere else, you know, depending. But here, they have a sole abutter, and they're dedicated in service to that abutter. So it's almost, you know, a collaborative, with very little outside impact until it converts to something other than it is.
And not to get blinded by the positives, but this kind of, the idea that this would take some of the pressure off the peripheral residential section of Plymouth is
They got to go
selling
somewhere.
point.
Yeah.
You know, and they're increasing the population at the university, or trying to. So unless we make some steps to accommodate them, then the pressures in the family neighborhoods are going to be very extreme.
We also have the ability to comment and approve or disapprove this application, whereas university housing, we don't have a lot to say.
But this looks fairly hidden to me, just from looking at this. I don't know,
Right.
I haven't been there to see it, but it just looks like it's, you know, if you didn't drive right up to it, you wouldn't know it was there.
And it's not a part of town that most people are ever going to go to. I just walked through from, you know, I guess I came from like Foster's and walked all the way through all the student apartments, and it's kind of eye-opening what's there, because you never go there, you never see that, and this would just be part of that. It's
Which brings up kind of another thing, is thinking about recreation and the future of recreation in the town and the whole idea of Langdon Woods. And I can't really see what this property does beyond this map, but there is, you know, an idea of having that be a more concrete recreation area, which kind of already is. So just, if there's any sort of connectivity that can be done on this property, I think that might be a nice way to connect it to the larger natural area that is down there, so.
And I think the satellite map is probably the best one to sort of indicate that.
And I think related to connectivity, Rebecca, you know, and some of the other multifamily proposals we've had in the last couple of years, we've really tried to press at least having a pedestrian connection through the site and out to the road, even if there's not a sidewalk on the road. That we're trying to make our pedestrian connections better and better. And then integrating stormwater and landscaping as much as we can.
How big are the Fox Park apartments, each building unit? Do you know, have an idea? I'm just trying to compare scale.
I'd say it was pretty similar.
Okay.
I mean, they have 4 or 5 buildings down there, 6.
3 stories, I think. Yeah, okay.
They have basement apartments plus 2 above.
Yeah.
As far as, you know, site-wise, they're probably comparable. It's just a little bit more intense use here just because of the extra floors, I think.
Just curious as far as scale.
I can get
goes,
that
so.
information easily.
I mean, I can see them from my back of my house, so I can.
So it's kind of premature, but how likely would it be to get a height variance, considering we were giving even, you know, Marriott a hard time for 35 or 7 feet or something?
You know, I don't really see the connection between today's modern world and 35 feet, other than this is going to require elevators, right? You know, and a lot of times, you know, when that kind of infrastructure wasn't available to, you know, most housing units. You think about it, 20, 30 years ago, it was pretty rare to see an elevator in a residential unit unless it was a high-rise. And now they're all over the place in certain aspects, you know, there's different ways to go around them. So I think that I'm not really sure, and I've had the discussion with the fire chief about this, is why they came up with that number. And the closest we could come up with was the height of the ladder. And our tower truck can go 100 feet. So that's kind of out the door. Just if that was the only basis, that it means nothing at this point, because we're already prepared for that. You know, with the other life safety improvements that are going to be going on here. And, you know, it is modern building, which tends to be a lot safer than the old stick builds. I'm still struggling with the connection between 35 feet or bust, you know.
It might be so, but I mean, we kind of gave the Marriott not a hard time, but it was a point of consideration that they were on the limit. And the only thing that was sticking up above 35 feet was some condenser unit or something like that, or a housing.
Right, and the same thing happened down at Alex Ray's barn, because the part that pierced the 35-foot limit wasn't habitable space. You know, and if there is, again, it depends on the engineering. It depends on the aspect, you know. You know, how's this going to look when it's built out? Is it going to be visible from Ashland? You know, things of that nature. And I understand that there was discussion about it at the time. But even so, what's the connection between, you know, that it seems like a fairly arbitrary number, you know, and you know, just sticking to it because it says 35 feet, that's why they would have to be going to the zoning board to vary that anyway. And I'm sure that there'll be plenty of data on both sides to either support or contradict that, that number.
Seems like the type of thing we should address then.
Yeah.
So that we're not having people go
Right.
if we don't think it really plays in to decision making anymore. Especially in this location. you
Right.
know, with the ladder truck and all the things you cited and the sprinklers that you mentioned.
So I do have one rather mundane question. What is your concept for dealing with internal refuse disposal in that building? Are you going to have chutes within the building to drop into a common dumpster, or I know I lived in a 26-story unit, and that was a real fire hazard, especially not citing students alone, but people emptying ashtrays with lit butts, and on floor 13 there's a fire, and if you live on 26, you got a bit of a problem. So could you perhaps address that?
So we haven't quite honestly gotten that far in the design discussion with the client.
Okay.
I tend to stay away from doing trash chutes in student housing projects.
Yeah.
We'll do them in multifamily projects where grown adults are living. There are very strict requirements in terms of the code and the fire rating of those chutes and how you handle the trash room on the first floor, and for all of the reasons that you mentioned. As for this project, we haven't decided what that approach is going to be yet.
All right.
We've done, I wouldn't say a large number, but 5 or 6 new construction projects, and we've not put in a trash chute. Typically, we have a dumpster, and students just bring trash down and throw it away on the way to class.
Or in the hall.
Kind of unrelated, well, sort of related, but how can you encourage your residents to recycle? As I walk by a lot of student housing, I just see dumpsters overflowing with beer cans and bottles, things that are recyclable.
Sofas.
We've been really uber focused on being more green in the last 3 or 4 years. We provide all the students with a blue bin in their apartment unit. So each, when they move in, they've got a clean recycling bin. We are constantly struggling with trying to find creative ways to get them to, you know, put their recycling in the recycling bin. But in some are more receptive than others.
That's great.
I will say that 2018, we are working, we have a marketing campaign that we're working on to address this very thing, is trying to educate our tenants about being more mindful, and so that they, you know, graduate from college with a degree, but also maybe a little more awareness about the environment. We've not cracked that code yet. we're mindful of it. And so, you know, all the new construction we do, even renovation work we do, we don't, you know, we don't get LEED certified, but we build to that quality, so that we're, you know, extremely mindful of energy conservation and insulation and, you know, Energy Star and anything that we can do and we can afford to do, we try to include in our projects.
Okay. Thank you.
So is there a possibility of making a collaboration with the university, you know, or like a private-public thing?
I doubt it. I mean, I don't think they have a need for the housing. And so if they came to us and said we're desperate, then sure, we'd talk to them. But we've given them every opportunity. We've not really approached it either.
So I was thinking that you can probably fall under their umbrella. You can have like an 8-story building at that point. So think about it.
Well, but then you lose the taxes.
Yes.
Oh, never mind.
There's the downside. Anything else? We really want just honest feedback, and just, you know, if there's concerns or other issues, please fire away. We want to hear what's
At some point, would you arrange a site visit?
whenever, sure. You want to see the site?
I mean, when it gets, yeah.
Or under construction, if we come to that, sure, absolutely. That's easy.
Where would the dumpster be located? Is it shown on your? Okay. But, you know, it's always the problem here is we kind of require screening and we require access. Right. And the two don't always work out. You know? So if there was some way to keep it out of the public view where they could just pull in and get out without, you know, costing too much from, you know, waste management. You know, if they have any problems, they won't get out of the truck to address anything. They'll just drive on by, as you know. And that's kind of a problem. That's just something to think about going forward. You know, the easiest access to that for the driver would probably work out better for your project and for the kids too. You know, it's located near the front. Nobody likes to see that. So you know how it works. It's like we all address that. We know it's there, but nobody wants to talk about it.
Right. You know, it comes up every project we do.
Okay.
And, it's unfortunately part of the deal.
Yeah.
Given the proximity of the site, I would also be concerned about bears in your dumpsters.
Mm.
Very real problem. We have it all the time up on Tenny Mountain. And it's a mess. Worse.
Don't hear that one with every project. New Hampshire.
Don't me.
That's a good point, because they come right into the neighborhoods.
Oh, I've got them in my house, which is right in town. So
That's near some of your other buildings.
Any other questions or comments?
One thing I'll just add, because I was harping on the stormwater stuff and kind of the site constraints, I really do like the fact that you put some of that parking underneath, because that obviously reduced some of the additional parking that would have been needed on the site. So it is nice to see you use the grade in that way. So it's appreciated.
30 spaces or whatever down below grade there in the parking garage or something.
I don't know what the final count we're at. I think it was
About 150.
Yeah, we're plus 40 or so underneath.
40.
Underneath the building.
Yep.
There's 78 surface spaces.
Thank you.
What time do you think you might be in? I want to make sure I'm doing 8 o'clock usually. I'm not wide awake. Somewhere in there.
Maybe.
Okay. Yeah, okay. No, I'll be here. Great, Ro, thank you. Thank you.
All right, next up, we're continuing our discussion of the development of the master plan.
Who needs a paper copy of material I sent you?
I printed them all.
You did?
Yes.
Yeah, no,
Though I may have missed one, Greg. What I have is chapter 1, the vision with the maps.
that's the,
Right.
it's just maps.
The land use chapter, the transportation profile, implementation. Am I missing one?
So, we've got the document that's just maps, 40 pages of maps. Then there's vision, land use, and implementation. There's chapters 1, 2, and 3, and then economic profile and transportation profile. I didn't hear you mention all of those.
I've got all of those.
You got all of them?
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I don't have the
Okay.
complete set then. Good, okay. I'll just have to print one up.
So I guess first question is comments on the plan?
And just, we went over this, but the maps eventually will be interwoven throughout the document. They're not going to be in, isn't that what we talked about?
Yep.
They won't appear like this, like a, or is that not the case?
We asked for them specifically.
So
in
we
one
could
place.
look
We
at 'em.
easily look at all the maps, yeah.
But is that how they're going to go into the document, the final
It'll
master
look
plan?
like they do in the chapters, right?
Yeah, we can do it however.
Yeah.
Yep. And yeah, as I mentioned, I gave them to you in Word documents, so you can move them throughout if you want.
And that's kind of up to us and your class. And,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I ask a couple of very picayune questions about the maps? I'm just looking at the maps and stuff, and so the traffic volume in Plymouth, map 8, it's got like, 19,000, 20,000. Is that per day or average per day or?
Right, we can
Did it for a period of time?
maybe in the map itself do a better job of explaining exactly
Yeah.
what's in it, because we are trying to interweave it in the chapters so that the chapters explain the map, but maybe making the maps more standalone,
Yeah.
like infographics themselves, shouldn't be too hard to do.
Those are DOT figures, right? Or figures you guys captured for
DOT
them?
figures, and I'd have to look at the numbers that are on there, but I think they include the most recent field season.
Okay.
Although some of them might not. I'll take a look at that.
Didn't North Country Council do that as well? So is it?
They do it for DOT.
We do it for DOT, and I don't think we did any kind of bonus local counts this year for Plymouth, but we have in the past. And actually, I do see one on there that we could update, because we got a traffic count on Highland Street very late in the season, like October, and that might be the only one that needs to be updated. 8,200 cars a day
Versus what, 6,100 or
versus 61.
430 on Reservoir Road? Wow. Count me twice. Hey, so then map 9, bridges and box culverts in Plymouth. I mean, there seems like there's like missing culverts and box. It just.
Missing pipe culverts for sure.
Okay, but I don't know. I thought there was isn't the Claybrook, when it goes up under Tenny Mountain Highway, isn't that in a box culvert? Or is it a pipe culvert? I don't know. But there's like
Now that you
nothing
mention
there.
it, I would think it's a large culvert, so it could be a box culvert, but yeah, this data is directly from DOT.
Yeah, okay. Well,
and so I can take a look again, but DOT doesn't say it's a box culvert, then they have their own ways of
yeah, I
defining that.
thought Bell Road had like a box culvert there too. I mean, a lot of these, it seems like some of these things are just, missing, but if it's based on DOT and that's what they got, then that's what it is, so.
And yeah, if the town has a
Yeah,
good
probably
data
not.
set of culverts that you want to throw
Maybe
on
so, I
there.
don't know, but, okay.
I guess I had a comment on map 1, the land use patterns. At first, I looked at it as kind of an existing land use map, but I think it's pretty much an existing land cover map. I just wanted to make sure, that's what I saw from looking at the data sources.
We did try to look at the parcel data and make it more of a use map than a land cover map. It's tricky in the rural portions where some parcels have one house on them, and mostly forested.
So that's why you have that kind of hatched green for rural residential?
Yeah, we didn't carve the parcels apart and pinpoint where the structures are on them. We just indicated that they have a house on them.
Do you want to just go through each of the maps one at a time? Does that make sense?
Sure.
I'm afraid that I didn't have a lot of time to look at everything over the past couple days.
Excuse me a moment, Madam Chair.
And the page numbers on this 40-page thing of just maps don't correspond with anything in the chapters. It's just for our reference today.
Any other comments on the map on page 4, the land use patterns?
I have one more. So I think this falls to us just in how we talk about this map. It helped, Greg's description helped, because if I look at like in Chris's neighborhood, and you look at that way that we've color coded the rural residential, it looks like there's a lot more development out there than there is because it's capturing whole properties. So I think overall, the kind of pattern of development we see, where a lot of density closer to downtown and a lot less headed out your way, I think it communicates, but it could be easy for a homeowner to look at it and be confused. So I think we just need to really describe it and not misrepresent what's going on out there.
So did you took like the tax map or something and just outlined? Because that looks like the shape of our property right there.
Yep, it's the properties.
That's what I saw, right?
Yeah, and Tenny Mountain, well, that whole parcel is used as a ski area, but that's another thing you're talking about where it takes up a whole property.
Yeah.
What would be your preference or solution? How would you clarify that?
I don't have one. I think it can be really challenging, as Greg pointed out, to try to get down to the structure level. And the fact is, if any of these do have homes on them, they could have other structures on them at some point.
Right.
So I just want to make sure that we all understand what the map says and what it doesn't tell us when we try to integrate it.
I don't, what you've got there in color, I don't have here, so I'm not sure.
Well, take a look at this one.
It's in the blanket, the cover sheet just says vision on it. It should be there, but I got to drop it out.
You're welcome to look at mine. I have it here too.
I have an extra if you need it.
Okay, let me see. If I've got one, it's all right, but I'm looking at this.
It's at the bottom of the pile. Yeah,
That one right there.
This one?
Yep.
It should be one of the first maps.
I'm like, okay, I'm lost.
No,
I'm not
we don't
looking
want
at
you
what the
lost.
rest of you are.
We want you to come back.
Oh, that's better.
Yeah, so it sounds like we just want a bit more, maybe even in the map title, just sort of based on tax map parcel information. Like that. Any other comments on the map on page 4? Zoning district, and not comments about our zones, but comments about the map itself.
Which page?
This is a page, so I'm just going through them one at a time.
I got my pages mixed up.
Oh,
I'll give you a copy, Greg.
So it's 2012 zoning that the map's based on. There haven't been any changes, Brian, right? To
No
any of the
zoning
district
line
boundaries?
changes at all.
It should be accurate.
Floodplain development overlay. And again, these aren't in the environmentally sensitive zone. Any comments? Airport overlay zone, these are mostly things that, as long as you think they're clear. The recreation map?
I'll just share that what I shared with Greg before the meeting started, that he really tried to do what we asked him for, and I think this map really helps. Because I think Chris and I, at one of the meetings, we talked about just trying to show some potential connections that we don't know if and when they'll ever be done by trails or whatever. And I think you did that with those arrows. They're not fixed locations. They just kind of say like, hey, over time, we should think about this. But you also seem to capture a lot of the trails, I know many of which you've actually mapped, so that's helpful.
And I've heard from the Plymouth Conservation Commission that they have a goal of getting from downtown, connecting downtown with the uplands around town by trails, so a few of those arrows communicate that.
Okay, map 7, development constraints.
I had a comment on this one, just wondering if it's helpful to add the conservation lands layer, because I was looking at some of the constrained lands and they're protected, so. I mean, we could flip back and forth and look at a map of conservation land. It's not, I just wanted to float that as a possibility.
Where's the conservation lands? Which map?
I don't know, it's a good question.
Well, the previous map, recreation map, has the conservation lands.
So we took that layer and added it here.
I mean, those are development constraints, so.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, that might be a good thing to have on there.
I mean, it's not extensive, it's only a couple properties.
We'll add that.
It hasn't happened yet, but there is going to be. Remember the Healy subdivision, Texas Hill Road and New Hebron Road? It was purchased by the abutter. He's putting it in a conservation easement.
Oh, really?
And that'll connect the old Woods Road to the bottom of the Falver conservation property. So it hasn't been affected yet, but it's definitely in the works.
Cool.
So that would just green up that area past the pond down to New Hebron along that road.
That's amazing. So that's like around LeBlanc's?
Yeah, I think
It's on that
Al's comes down behind LeBlanc's.
Yep.
And it's Bill Noyes that purchased it. That goes up and it abuts probably right behind Norm's place.
Oh, wow.
Or the Dennis's, yeah.
That's amazing.
Any more comments on development constraints? Going on to the next page, areas of potential growth and future demand.
For this one, I spent a lot of time with these maps. Unless we create another map, this kind of seems like our future land use map. I mean, it has that level of description. It doesn't have to, follow our zoning, and it's not like hard and fast, but it seems like these are areas that have come out and talking about it. My only concern is that the area north of Tenny Mountain Highway is an area we identify as constrained, and yet we identify it as potential for increased demand for commercial development. But
I was playing around with how to word that based on how I've heard the planning board talking about it, and what the green tries to communicate is it's not something that the board has identified as necessarily a good place for growth. It's a place where growth's expected to, where there's expected to be demand for it. So yeah, I'm definitely open to changing the wording of that, or even adding or removing.
The word demand in there somewhere might be.
Okay.
And colors almost, because, green means go.
and there clearly is some development there when it's not we're trying to abandon them at all.
Right.
But
yeah, so just.
But it is constrained.
Yeah.
just by the proximity to the river.
Yeah, it's the area that we all can't seem to figure out together
Right.
the most.
It's our lake.
At
It's
times.
the only place we can develop commercially, so that's where we have to do it.
I hadn't thought about the color piece, Rebecca.
Any other comments on this map?
I just have a question. Okay, so in the green, is that what is showing this other growth would be as to if some businesses wanted to come to town? Is this looking to be the only real good places for them to go?
I think we'd
Or the
prefer the
yellow.
yellow,
Yeah.
but I think the green is acknowledging that there is going to be some demand for commercial development in these green areas.
Are you suggesting make the yellow green and the green yellow?
I don't know, I'm just, I'd like to see a few more businesses come in myself, and I know a lot of other people would, so I just didn't know if we've even got any room for it, if you're talking about Tenny Mountain Highway for.
On that north side, we're constrained by, some wetland areas and the 100-year floodplain and the environmentally sensitive zone. So I think acknowledging that, I think we're trying to say that the best place for development is on that south side of the road, but also giving a nod to the fact that there's probably going to be some development on the north side as well. Is that what other folks are?
Yeah, and if we don't, in the master plan process, if we don't think that we have the right tools to, guide development differently for those two areas, that's one of the things we'll have to work on at some point and see if we can convince the voters as well. But we've heard that there's capacity for water and sewer out there. We have, depending on who you talk to, we have capacity for traffic out there. It's a pretty big roadway. But we have kind of an uphill, easier to develop area with apparently lots of available land, and then this other challenging spot. So they're different. We've kind of treated them the same in zoning. And then everything around Tenny Mountain Highway, around Tenny Mountain Ski Area. It's a pretty big yellow area.
Yeah, so the, I drew the area all the way up to the town line. Might make sense to make it just include areas that aren't steep. I don't know if it matters to you. If you see development maybe going up into the hilly terrain up there.
So Michael wanted to put like a restaurant on top of the mountain, so it's steep areas and stuff.
Pretty steep.
Yeah, Tenny's not that steep.
That's a good point.
I think what works about this is that it's not too defined, like they're kind of these nebulous areas, so it leaves room for definition by this planning board, other planning boards, and the voters. So I wouldn't make you get too crazy.
Yep.
And somewhere up there in that yellow, there's a piece of conservation land.
Yep.
Right.
But it's not conservation land, it's
Yeah.
just a piece of property that the town
Landlocked
owns, but
property,
it's
yeah.
not protected.
It's not protected? I
I
thought it
don't
was.
think it
I
has,
thought, Michael, I thought he gave it, or was it given
To the
before?
Conservation. The
Yeah.
Conservation Commission
Yeah,
kind of.
they have it.
yes, but it's not protected.
Doesn't have an easement on it.
Right, there's no
It had an
legal.
easement to it.
Not showing up in our conservation layer.
I'm pretty sure, if I'm understanding it correctly, it was gifted to the town, the Conservation Commission has been charged with managing it, but there's no easement on it.
Right.
That might be the case. It's landlocked. There's no access to it is the other
Right.
little problem too.
And it's hard to find.
Yeah, well, and that's one of the things the Conservation Commission is doing right now is trying to hire a surveyor to figure out exactly where that land is. And it's steep and it's rough and it's,
Okay, next map. Or do we want to look at some of these figures, or just skip right to the maps? Next one is on page. Natural resources.
And I wasn't sure which chapter to put this in. Could go in the land use chapter, but I included the map and let the planning board put it in the plan wherever they see fit.
I think probably will end up going in the natural resources chapter.
When that gets
once it
updated,
exists, yeah.
it was good to see the wildlife habitat from the state plan in here too. We talked about.
Yeah, and the natural resources map on page 24 is actually also data from Fish and Game from the Wildlife Action Plan. Cool.
Is there any way to get the one on number 25 to get the actual data from them so we can make the map look the same as the rest of them?
I'll try to track that down. I think we have that as a shape file.
Okay. It just might be nice if it's consistent with, at least in its layout, with everything else.
Yeah.
The pink's pretty bright too. But I won't be that picky. Okay. Are we good to move on to the road network?
I found an issue with the transportation road network that must be with our underlying file that's missing some of our local roads.
Oh yeah, the file that DOT has to get updated by the town, and in pretty much every town it.
I can imagine. And I don't know, Brian, what the process is for us to update our road layer, but like I was just looking at like Chadron and Ski Lift and Point of View, like all those roads are kind of missing. Like we see the start of Chadron Lane.
That'd be an old one.
And that's just part of town that I know best, but I don't know if maybe other people know other neighborhoods where there are new road segments that have gone in the last 5 or 10 years. There haven't been that many.
No. Mostly shared driveways type of roads, not a road. Could we incorporate our current like tax map layer showing the roads with this?
If that clears up the ownership of the roads, then.
No, at least it would show the ones that are there. That's what I'm saying.
So,
One swap.
So you're saying there's some private roads that aren't showing up on this?
No, yes, a very big one.
Okay.
Actually.
Yeah. Yeah, DOT would probably like that data too.
So this was updated in 2013.
I don't know. This data, the road data is actually from September 2017.
You might know.
Okay.
It's this area up here. There's
Okay.
a road connection and a road out
Oh,
here.
that old
kind of on the
ski
top of the
area.
hill. Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
okay.
And I mean, it doesn't bother me if that little connection on this little map doesn't get there, but I just wanted to flag it.
Any reason, I'm just curious about separating them all into different classes. Was it too busy if you had all the different class roads on one map?
We wanted to kind of explain each of the classes to people and, highlight them kind of independently. So you're talking about some of the next maps, like on page 32.
Yeah, yep.
Yeah, because in the chapter itself, we get into some narrative about what class 1 means, what class 2, class 6 means, and we wanted to have a map accompanying that narrative that just showed all those roads. And maybe that adds a little too much bulk to the transportation chapter, and those maps could be moved somewhere else.
That's a great idea. We could always put them in an appendix.
Yep.
And reference them in the main body of it.
And
We were talking about an appendix at one point. Wouldn't that be a good place for them? Just
right. Even, I mean, I just wonder what one map with all the different classes would look like with each of the, because they're all highlighted in different colors.
Yeah.
It's hard for me to see it in context when I'm looking across, but I'm not reading the chapter at the same time as well, so.
Make the map and see. I'll send that map along to you guys separately, and you can put it wherever you want in there. It'll be tough. I have to play around with the colors. The colors probably won't make much sense, but I'll try to make them as much sense as we can.
If possible, if not, we can deal with multiple maps. All right, so moving through all the different classes of roads, any comments on any of those? How about the traffic volume?
Yeah, is that per day? No.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Well, he's gonna address it, or so address in the chapter too.
Yeah,
right?
it doesn't say in there exactly what AADT is, but that's annual average daily traffic.
Oh, okay.
Cars per day.
Okay. And we talked about the bridges and box culverts. Downtown public parking.
And you did that, right? Didn't you do the,
Yep, as part of the, the parking inventory. So this is public and customers only parking. It's not, reserved, residential parking in the downtown area.
Might be helpful, if possible, to get a couple other street names
Okay.
in here. It's especially on South Main Street, it's getting a little out of context.
Mhm.
But anywhere where there's a parking area that's touching a road, it might be nice to get the street name just to sort of put a frame of reference in there.
Yeah.
Sidewalk network.
And maybe the same thing there with at least a couple of
Street names.
street names.
Yep.
it's pretty skeletal.
I thought it was good to see.
Yeah, there's more than you would, especially that long one. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's a big
Island
improvement.
Street,
Yeah.
and yeah, that just emphasizes the gap at the western end of
Yeah,
Island Street.
yeah, yeah.
It's like the meeting of the Transcontinental Railroad. We get the sidewalks down, we'll drive the Golden Spike. And
Try again in the next staff application.
Right.
The golden curb cut.
I love it. Sounds like a sleazy dive.
Yeah.
The transit routes. I think it's good to see it laid out like this, so.
Yep.
I don't know if it's possible in here, if it maybe says this in the chapter, but just the PSU, like, semester, during the semester only or something.
Yeah, a little information on the map.
Mm-hmm. And then it becomes more useful beyond just reference in the master plan.
Yeah, it's good to pull them out of context and look at them, as standalone maps.
And then the railroad map, any comments on that?
Hard to argue with that.
Where's the Golden Spike?
Not what I expected. All right. Greg, do you want us to go through I guess I'm just gonna say that I'm less inclined to go through each of these figures because I feel like once we have a better idea of the layout, then I think since we have all the information, we can manipulate it as we would like.
I thought I'd throw it in there just to comment on the style or anything else, but as I mentioned, we'll get you the raw data
Yep.
behind those. You can make your own if you want to.
Does anyone have any comments on the figures we skipped over a lot of them, but specifically in the economic profile.
I don't have anything on that particular one, but where I'm just very new to this, what is the ultimate plan, this master plan? What are we trying to get to? What is going to be the ultimate purpose of this?
Of the master plan?
Yeah, what are we trying to achieve?
Okay. Well, the master plan is, I guess, I'm going to just read the introduction.
Cheating. It's right here in the vision.
I know, because I just got this tonight, and I haven't read anything, and I thought, well, I could take it home and read it, or I could just ask you.
So, all towns are required to have a master plan. They're only required to have a vision and a land use section. But the idea is the master plan is it's not a binding document, but it's what guides us in creating and changing zoning ordinances, site plan review. So we've done a lot of work over the past, was it like 2.5 years now? Yeah. Looking at what perceptions of townspeople. We did a big survey. We've had public engagement. I think 4 different public engagement events where people came and just gave feedback. So trying to take looking at what exists in town and what the residents of Plymouth see, what we'd like to see in the future, and trying to put that in a cohesive document that basically identifies where we are now and where we want to go, and then some steps to get there. So, does anyone else have anything to? I
would just add that the chapters that you get tonight, the first 5, which Greg and his office helped us with, are still draft. So there's still plenty of time to give input as a planning board member, and we still have to put it out to the public for their input. Okay. But those are relatively updated, and the maps will help inform them. And then we have some other chapters that we still have to write as a planning board. And so I have a group of students who we can use in the spring, and that's been our plan, to have them do any background research, get us updated figures, start to pull it together, and then we'll actually go through and do the editing.
So with this 2.5 years that you've been on this, and we've had public meetings, what did you get from the public meetings? What does most of the public, have they said what they want?
We can probably dig up the results from the survey.
It was mostly just data collection at that point. Once it's kind of knocked into a presentable shape, though not in its final form, there's a series of public hearings that are held. And then we'll take public input and edit the plan accordingly.
So far, we really don't know what exactly the public is saying.
No, I think we do.
We have that.
And it's in the vision. I think I saw it in here somewhere. There was, kind of some bullet points that the basic things that the public liked about the town. I forgot how that was worded, but characteristics of Plymouth that are important to maintain include, and that came out of those vision. Those public hearings. That's on page 6 of the vision. And coming into this cold, because I'm a lot further along than you are, but it is sort of overwhelming. So the other thing, Steve, that might help, and I don't know if Jack has this yet, but you sent those sample master plans from other towns, so you can kind of see what other towns have done, and I think some of them Steve has worked on. So.
But this implementation section, I think, is the other part to answer your question.
Okay, I haven't seen it.
Yeah, and you'll have a chance to look at it, but a lot of the actions that are in here are things that came out of those different themed focus groups, like the economic development focus group, the natural resource recreation one, whatever they were titled. And also things that were identified by this board and other boards. It's just kind of like things that need to be addressed.
Local businesses, too.
And local businesses. So that might answer some of your questions, too.
But if you want to see more specific, I know that the survey summary exists somewhere. And the information that was that North Country Council presented at each of the different focus groups, I'm sure we can dig those up as well if you want to look specifically at what the feedback we got from people.
And you can, if you'd like to read the last issue, certainly just to get a sense of what it is and how it's put together, I can set you up with it.
Okay. Yeah, because different people have asked me too, about the master plan, and I said, I don't know. I know it's been going on for a while, but I don't know where we're at with it.
I think we're all I'm not going to speak for everyone, but this process has gone on for longer than we intended. But we've had some sort of extenuating circumstances that we're dealing with changing staff, and I think the board has pretty much fully turned over the course of since we've started this process, because I came on right as we were working on the contract with North Country Council, so there's been quite a bit of turnover, so.
And I think you'll see in the vision and the implementation section, and we may still have work left to do, but we're not necessarily hearing the same things from all people in town, as you would imagine, right? So the planning board tries to take that and synthesize it, and as best we can balance it. So, you know, some people want a lot of businesses, some people don't want any businesses. So, like, where can we accommodate business, and how can we do it in a way that's, you know, going to protect the things we say we love in our vision statement, but also, you know, not create other problems. So.
Okay.
Does that sort of dance around your question?
It does, and I'll look at this one.
All right. What else do you need from us?
Any more comments you can, on the chapters themselves, you can email them to me later this week or early next week. If there are edits, I can put them into the document before I turn it over to you again. And obviously, if you think of anything after December 31st, it's, you know, your plan, it's in your hands now.
He's getting ready to wash his.
Yeah.
He's going to bring popcorn. He's as a resident of Plymouth and just watch.
We still have room for alternate planning board members.
Yeah.
Don't want
We're
to
going
put
to
you in
institute a draft. I think that should be in the master plan. When we reach a certain level of vacancies on the board, we just spin the big wheel and somebody gets to step up.
Don't want to put you in a weird spot or anything.
Again.
Consider it a compliment.
So yeah, you know, keep North Country Council in the loop on when the public hearings are, but obviously those aren't planned yet. And we'll be in touch with you, Brian, about just, you know, invoicing for the final task.
Yep.
Of the contract and getting a letter closing out the.
Certainly, anybody can send stuff direct to Greg. I just ask that you send it back to me and I'll disseminate it, just to, so we stay within the lines.
Oh, so if we send it to Greg, he'll send it to you?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Should
cover
we
me, just so
resend
I'm in on it, but I mean, any communication, you know, we had that thing about.
Yep.
So
the Conservation Commission has all this, and we're meeting on Tuesday, and then we're having another work session on Thursday. So should the Conservation Commission send you stuff? How should we
I think it needs to come back through us.
come back to
Yeah.
us first?
I need the rep, yeah.
And we can always incorporate, you know, the changes that they want.
Yeah, we'll see if we get any feedback whatsoever. So.
I mean, I don't want to wait up to the last day, because if you want it to come back for this board, then it couldn't happen this month, right?
Right, so, to me, I mean, we can decide otherwise. It just seems like we should be channeling stuff through this board as opposed to having the Conservation Commission. I think it needs to go through our approval process anyway.
Makes sense.
But, so that brings us to next Thursday as well. I just want to see what we need. Are there any applications?
none.
Okay. So it seems like if the Conservation Commission's going to give us some material, then we should sit down and look at it.
Yeah, if they could get it by next Thursday, and then we could help.
I'll make sure it happens. Yeah, because they've been sitting on it for whenever you sent me, whenever we communicated. So I think since for 3 weeks now. So.
Okay. So I think, so next Thursday, when we meet, we'll go over those, and if there are any changes to the text, I'm not worried about sending them to Greg, but any changes and comments on the maps. Otherwise, I don't think you necessarily need to be here unless we need to look at the maps again. So.
Yeah, no, that I'll try to get you the maps before then. It won't be by the weekend, but try to get you the maps so you have them at that meeting.
And then maybe on the rest of the time on Thursday, we can spend some time just sort of coming up with a strategy for January and February, just to make sure we're making progress. So
So I can't be at the meeting next week, so I'm at another planning board. But I looked at the 2007 plan, and I think if you guys could look at the 5 chapters that we have and look at the 2007 plan outline, which is set up as 2 different volumes.
Yep.
There are some things like housing, cultural and historic resources. Like if you could look at those and decide which ones do you think you want to have the students take a look at and look for new information, or reach out to stakeholders like the historical folks or anything like that. It would help to start to put together a work plan for early in the semester so we can have them out gathering that and reporting back to the planning board. And then we can still decide like how we want to format it, what goes in the appendix, what goes in the master plan. But at least people can still find that information.
So one thing you guys don't have with your documents is this outline, because I made it up just a few hours ago, just highlighting what
It almost got away.
You still have to do as a planning board. It's outlined the same way the old master plan was, with 2 volumes, and I didn't put too much work into thinking about how to restructure the master plan. I know Tara had talked with you guys about moving the chapters around, and I didn't hear any real concrete ideas on it, so I just kept the same outline as the last plan.
And then volume 2 is the one that I think a lot of us probably don't have printed out. I have just we can probably get to it online.
Right.
Yep, I think volume 2 is not online, I thought.
It says data book available at Town Hall and Pease
Yeah.
Public Library.
Right.
I've got it in that blue binder on the chair over there.
So is there
Printed.
not an electronic version?
I don't think it's.
So we can't look at volume 2 unless we go to the library. How big is it?
It's not big.
Okay.
It's 3 chapters. It includes some of the stuff that Greg's already helped us with, like
It
transportation.
is big.
Yeah, and it's printed off one-sided, but yeah, it's pretty big. You can.
Do you have an
That's
electronic?
NCC's copy.
Do you have an electronic copy of that?
We don't.
No, actually, trying to obtain it from Sharon, there was no copy.
Do we have the ability to scan it?
I can put it into PDF form.
Okay, that would probably be.
Yeah, 'cause we have a decent scanner. We could.
Let me
We'll
see.
probably do that just for our sake, so we have a digital copy.
I can
of
reach
it.
out to the author and see if she has an old copy on her computer.
Okay.
She works for Dartmouth now.
Okay.
Just hoping. Because
Yeah.
it would just be easier to work with if we
Yeah, it
want
would
to
be.
pull any of that information than
Mhm.
have you go through scanning it.
Right.
Yeah.
I hate to have you go through that.
I just stack it up on the thing and
And then push the button, yeah.
push the button, yeah.
Yeah, I know you make it sound fun, but
Go quick.
So I'd like to make sure our entire master plan is on the
Are you gonna
website.
leave
Let
that
me-
yeah.
Yes.
This one,
Or,
yeah, I think NCC wants it back.
yeah.
I'll leave with you for now.
Well, I can get it scanned tomorrow.
Okay,
Well,
great.
Are you going to check to see if they?
Yeah, let me check with Joanna
All
Whitcomb
right.
or Brian and just see if they have it. They probably do have a copy of it.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, okay.
Is it all in these sleeves? No, okay, good. If it was all in these sleeves, that'd be fantastic.
Well, yeah, then I'd ask you to do it for us before the 31st,
Yeah, right.
if you don't mind.
Okay, so next Thursday we will meet, we will discuss any recommendations that the Conservation Commission has on the material they've been given, and then we'll sort of we'll look at both Volume 1 and Volume 2 of the master plan, and I'm trying to come up with a bit of a work plan for the next couple months. So.
Is that important to have, or is it
I'll pull it off the other ones.
just the outline? Yeah.
I think so. I think yes, it is important.
Okay.
Pull it off from there.
Oh, can I keep the clip too?
So specifically, Rebecca, what should we be doing between now and the 21st? Is there anything we should?
So it sounds like we should be reviewing the chapters that have not been done by North Country Council, so anything that is red and underlined. We have talked about your class doing I guess we're calling it the natural resources chapter, but the natural heritage section. And then look through the remaining other bits and see if this is something that we're going to be trying to get the rest of these chapters. So we just need to review the chapters in volume 2 once we dig it out of the depths of somebody's computer backup, hopefully. Because my sense is there's a lot of stuff in these red underline, that's a lot of things that we haven't been working on. And it might be that, okay, we'll get, obviously, volume 1 will be done, we'll get the natural resources chapter done. And then the other bits, is it gonna be in the next 6 months, or is it gonna be something we're just gonna have to start revolving and working through? So
I guess realistically, should we just pick a couple of things to instead, because there's a lot of stuff there, and especially if we're going to do like we did tonight, and we've been doing, going map by map or page by page. If there was just a couple of things, we could make sure that we all read ahead of time, so we could just come in with.
Yeah, I guess I think a sense of the other sections that have not been. I don't even know how they look long. Looking at that binder, I'm not sure how long they are, but just get a sense of what's in each of these other chapters, how much we think needs to be updated. Is it worth updating? Is it something that we want to do before we get this whole plan completed in this current iteration by May? Does that make sense?
Yeah. And if you know of any, new studies or new information specific to the town of Plymouth that should be considered, just jot it down.
I am happy looking at all of these different sections. It would be nice if we had at least 2 sets of eyes on each section, but if we want to assign out the sections according to where we feel like maybe we know we have an area of expertise, if anyone wants to just grab a section or 2, just for simplicity, because we only have a week to do this. So, but yeah, I will look at all of them. Does anyone else want to grab a chapter or 2, or is anybody?
Where are we grabbing them from?
Just the red underline section.
Oh, you mean just agree?
Yeah, you're going to cover that section. I just want to make sure we're getting at least 2 sets of eyes on each of these sections. If everyone can look at everything, I think that would be best, but it would be nice if we got.
This is all pending delivery of the document, though, right?
Yeah.
Or, yes, maybe
Okay.
we can ask our friends at the town hall to maybe just pass it around, the physical, because there should be a copy at the, or do you not know that there's a copy at the town hall?
I can look for it. This is well, that's why I was going to get that just in case.
Yeah, but if we could circulate some physical copies too, worst case, the library, the town hall copy, and then this one, if you're willing to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll leave this one.
So this stuff in red and underlined isn't in here?
No.
All right. So yeah, I'll have that done tomorrow. Been having transmission problems with email for whatever reason. So I'll probably just print them and mail them out if it works that way.
We're not going to have it for like several days then.
Yeah, I think.
I think I have all my eggs in Steve's basket, but if you can find an electronic copy, that'll be the.
Yeah, I think whether we need to do a community profile or not, we should talk about that. The housing profile is going to need to be all new, 10 years, like everything. A lot has changed, at least. There's some easier to get data. But like some of the historic resources, we might be happy with what we have. The natural heritage might not need that much updating. We have some maps. We should make sure that we speak to those. But community facilities probably has changed a little bit. But I think if we look at those and get a sense to the degree to which the planning board thinks they need attention, and then we can prioritize them with the students. And I'll have them working in pairs, doing the research and pulling them into Word documents that we can then review. We can work on the content together, and then they can help format and add photos. Jack gave me 4 photos tonight. So we can start thinking about photos and trying to make it a document people might want to read.
Yep. Does that make sense?
Okay, so where are we at? We're all reading all of these, or?
So not
somebody-
these, the actual, we're looking at the old master plan. So, we do need to review these eventually, but these are the drafts that North Country Council got us. We need to be looking at the sections.
So that's stuff I don't have, right?
I don't know.
Really, for Bonnie just coming in fresh, her having a chance to read those,
Yeah, it's
and not that you have to go too crazy editing yet, don't feel any pressure, but your questions could be really helpful.
Yep.
Okay.
Because it's your fresh set of eyes.
I think that makes sense, yeah.
And it'll help bring you up to speed on some of the conversations we've had and other
Okay.
planning board members before us.
And if there are things that we think should be in the somewhere in the master plan that we don't think are yet, would next meeting be a good time to bring those up?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as distribution goes, we're hoping Steve's gonna come through with an actual digital copy that can get distributed to everyone. Then
I'm going to get a master physical copy
Okay.
at the very least, and probably scan that electronically
Okay.
too.
I'm happy to be a distribution point, if that makes
Okay.
more sense, if we just wanna stick them on my front porch,
Okay.
so that we don't have to wait for the mail, so,
If
Yeah,
I,
that's true. I mean, I can always drop them in your mailboxes.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
yeah.
if I can get an electronic copy, Brian, I'll reach out to you
Yes.
and try to give it to you in a way that's not going to be too cumbersome.
I mean,
I
we
think-
can always pass around
If you-
flash drives.
If you could just tell Brian, then he wouldn't have to scan it, and then he could, like, you know, depending upon how big it is, just email it
could
to
forward
everybody
it.
else, yeah.
Right.
And if he's having problems with email, you know, probably don't go through Brian to forward it out, just forward it to everybody that.
I'll start with him.
I'm assuming that the problem with the email is on the recipient's end, not my
I don't know.
end.
You know,
Who knows?
I should, you know, yeah, except you use a different email address and it went through fine, so,
Mystery.
yep.
You know, it wasn't that big of a thing. You know, it was zipped. It should have been able to be passed.
Good luck.
We'll see. I'll try to get a hold of it tonight.
All right. That's my agenda.
Thank
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Unfinished and other business.
I got one.
Yeah.
I received this today. The Andover Zoning Board has put out a public hearing notice for Tuesday, December 19th at the Andover Town Office concerning a request from Bell Atlantic Mobile Systems of Allentown, DBA Verizon Wireless, for variances for putting up cell towers that were within our 20-mile limit. So it's basically informing the board that they're
Okay.
doing that.
Okay. Noted.
Weren't cell towers weren't we supposed to get rid of a lot of this other visual clutter, and cell towers were gonna solve a lot of that problem? Seems like we've just added stuff.
Need all that power to charge those cell phones.
That's right. Power towers,
Yeah.
you know, wireless power towers, that would be it.
Did they put up that, tower that, they were testing, like with a balloon test?
Oh, the recent one, yes, they just started, actually.
Oh,
I have to go up and look at the conduit. They roughed in the road and
Okay.
have started working on the pad.
That was the Verizon tower?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Looked like a crappy time to start.
Well, actually, they got it in well. I'm not sure about their concrete. It's not that big of it's not like they're pouring a floor for Walmart, so they can blanket it and put heaters on it, you know, when it's something that small. But you're right. It is a lousy time to start.
Any other unfinished or other business? Any public comments?
After we've got this next round put together, is there a possibility that there'd be an extra copy that some of the public could get hold of to review and give some input?
Yes. I mean, there's no reason the public can't look at
Right.
any of this.
Yeah.
This is all public and transparent, so of course. Maybe we can get some of, after this next round, we can get everything printed, so at least there's a copy in the town hall for people
Well,
to
I
look
have,
at.
you know, the copies that Greg sent, the electronic ones that we reviewed tonight. I can print a copy of those and put them in a binder out.
And Greg
in the
has a
hallway.
bunch of copies.
Yeah, that's
don't you?
true.
Greg has a bunch of copies. I say
There could be 10
Thank you.
copies here at the town.
we
hall.
can give one to our member from the public. that we did.
Yes.
Give them 5.
Here you go, Frank.
Yep.
Like me.
Yeah.
Any other public comments? Not yet, at least, once you read it, maybe, but. All right, would someone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second it.
All right, all
like
those
it.
in favor?
Good job, guys.
All right.
Okay. Aye.
What if I,
Yeah.